Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 81 with Katie Tavini. We had a great conversation. We talked about how she was able to transition into mastering full-time over the course of the coronavirus lockdowns. We talked about what it's like being a woman in this industry. We talked about her approach to mastering, communication, and so much more. I really think you're going to dig it. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Katie Tavini. Here we go. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Katie Tavini. Katie is a mastering engineer based out of the UK. I first came upon Katie when she was a guest on the Working Class Audio podcast, and I've been following her on social media since, and I decided to reach out recently, and Katie was gracious enough to join me on the show. So welcome to Secret Sonics, Katie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. How are you doing? It's a crazy time these days.
Yeah, I'm good. It's a very crazy time, but grateful to be healthy and working. So, yeah, not too bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, same. We're just kind of juggling a lot, but we're trying to make it work. Yeah, it's like we're both in lockdown, so we're pretending everything is okay, but it's tough.
It's like when everything's on fire, but you're like, no, this is fine.
Yeah, the garbage fire thing that people have been sharing about 2020, and it's 2021 and nothing has changed. But anyways, so tell the audience a bit about your story. Who are you? Where does music begin for you? How did you get into production? I guess give us like a quick lowdown.
Oh God, that's such like a long question. I don't even know where to start. Like, I always liked sound from since I was really little, and I was really nerdy. I got Cubase, or Cubasis as it was at the time, in like 2003 with a free copy of Wavelab with it. And I used to program MIDI and just really nerd out about it, and did music tech in college, and really enjoyed that as well, and was researching like recording techniques because I wanted to know how all of my favorite albums were made. And yeah, just being a general nerd, I think, really started it for me.
Yeah. What were some of those like favorite albums?
It's a really weird combination of like stuff that my dad used to listen to. So like 80s Manchester music. And
is that the Manchester genre, or am I mistaken? Okay,
my dad's well
I've heard
into
of it.
Manchester.
Yeah.
But then like other 80s stuff as well. So like Cocteau Twins and Enya, so stuff that was a little bit softer he was kind of into, and like Simple Minds and Ultravox and OMD, so quite synth heavy stuff, and Joy Division, obviously, New Order. So that's kind of what my dad was listening to. And then I played the violin in school because this is a weird story, but I saw some kids in my school playing the violin in an assembly. I was like 7 at the time or something, and they made the most disgusting sound I've ever heard. And I'd kind of grown up with my dad playing these records, and so it was like, it wasn't music, it was noise, and it was the first time I'd heard an unpleasant sound, and I was like, I want to do that. I really want to make... I don't know, it did something to me. It like shook me up.
That's so interesting. I find like a badly played violin, solo violin is like nothing that like hurts my ears more than that.
Oh, it's disgusting, isn't it?
I'm always hating on the violin, unfortunately, because of that.
But that really made me want to learn to play, just because it was so different. So like I begged my parents for lessons, and eventually they were like, yeah, all right then. So I borrowed a little violin from my school and had like, I think I had a lesson like every 2 weeks or something, and did practice in the meantime. And I just really enjoyed like making noises, making a racket. I think I've always really enjoyed being noisy.
Yeah.
Like, just a noisy person. In schools in the UK, they don't really teach pop music. It's all like classical music and religious music, I guess. So, yeah, had a little bit of a classical music background, but then I don't know how old I was. I must have been like 12 or something, discovered Slipknot and Korn and Rage Against the Machine. So I was such a little metal kid who played the violin and who also really loved 80s music. It was a really weird combination. But I just really wanted to find out, how... and like YouTube wasn't a thing then. Like, I didn't have an email address until I was like 16, I think. And even then I didn't know how to use it, and I didn't know anyone else with an email address to actually email them. So it was pretty pointless. But yeah, there wasn't like tutorials. So I used to go to the library and get like recording techniques for dummies out or whatever.
Those yellow books.
Yeah, those are the ones. Yeah. And they used to have like the cakewalk manual for whatever cakewalk software was popular at the time, and the Logic manual. And so I used to get these books out of the library and just like read instruction manual on whatever software it was, even if I didn't have that software, which I didn't. And yeah, just nerded out.
You were just fascinated by the techniques.
Yeah, it was just all really interesting that sound happened and sound came off a CD or a record. That was just really interesting to me, and I just wanted to know like how and why. And then yeah, when it came to like going to uni, I basically didn't want to get a real job, so I decided to go to uni and just spent all of my time in the studio and just learning how to use the studio as a creative tool. That was really encouraged on the course I did. So yeah, that was kind of how I got into music production.
Amazing. So I guess what led you down into niching into mastering?
All of these things have really long stories, and I'm sorry if this is boring, but this is going to be another really long and complicated story.
Yeah, tell your story. The stories are like what people live for, so I'll
try and tell it quite quickly. Basically, I'm really shit at mixing, like so bad at mixing, and I really, really enjoyed... so I was working at a studio and absolutely loved the recording sessions. Like, that was my favourite bit. And, when you start out, you're expected, bands have very small budgets and you're expected to kind of do everything, like editing and mixing and tracking and a bit of production. And, you kind of wear all these different hats. And I was just always really bad at mixing and I hated it and it stressed me out. And I just didn't know how you could get better. So I went online and was like always looking at mixing tutorials and, how could I do this better? And so I asked on a forum, like, how can you get better at mixing? And someone said, well, learn how to master. And I was so desperate that I was like, oh, okay, I'll give that a go. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what mastering was. Like, I had no idea. I'd never seen in a mastering studio. Like, it was somewhere where you sent your final mixes and they came back sounding better. And I did not know what happened. But what I started to do was like send off the final mixes, but then try and master them myself in my own time. And
like in parallel.
Yeah. And then I'd listen to the ones that came back and then I'd listen to mine and I'd be like, they don't sound anything alike. And then I'd try and work out what the proper mastering engineer had done. And then I just sort of practiced doing that. And over time I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Like, they're not putting every single plugin they own on a track. They're not making it like ridiculously loud. They're not even really changing the mix in most cases. And so I began to see like how subtle mastering is.
It sounds like you reverse engineered it,
Yeah, pretty much. This is like 10 years ago. there wasn't a whole load of information on YouTube, and I couldn't really get any like actual resources about mastering, and I didn't know any mastering engineers to talk to. So I was purely like feeling my way through it, hoping it would just make me a better engineer. So I'd done that, and then I don't know how long how long later it was, maybe like 2 years after I started doing that, I was still engineering and just trying to take less mixing jobs, or try and be like, okay, I'll engineer it, but that guy has to mix it because I'm no good at mixing. And I was up really late one night, and I just logged into Facebook, and I had a message from a guy I didn't know, but we had loads of mates in common. And he was like, hey, this is an emergency. Can you master a track for me? And I was like, this is really strange. I don't know you. It's like midnight, and what? So I was like, well, no, but I can recommend some mastering engineers. They're all super nice. And he was like, no, I literally need these masters tomorrow. And I was like, well, you should have planned your time better, mate. Just thinking, what is he on? What's going on? Anyway, we chatted for a bit, and I was like, you know what? I'll give it a go, but please, for both of our sake, don't use it if they're really bad, because then it looks bad on everyone involved. And so we kind of we started at like 1 a.m. and just started working, and we did it all online and bounced tracks to and from each other and gave each other feedback. And he was kind of tweaking the mixers, and I was tweaking the masters. And eventually we got to a place where we were both really, really happy with it, and he used it. And I was like, oh, okay, that was unorthodox, but it was an interesting night of learning. So,
this was a whole record.
Yeah, well, it was an EP, so wow. I think it was like 6 tracks.
Wow.
And so I just kind of thought, well, that's nice. I've learned something, like, whatever. And then a few weeks later, he came back and he was like, oh, my band have an album. I was like, good for you. And he was like, yeah, we'd like you to master it. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, it'll be really cool. And this was my second ever mastering job. And yeah, that record did quite well on the punk scene. And then off the back of that, I got asked to master some more records. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to invest in some decent monitoring. If it was one of those weird things where I was like, I know I don't really like mixing. I love engineering in the studio, but it's really hard finding work. It's long hours. I'm tired. I'd been doing that for like 5 or 6 years at that point. And I was kind of like, if people want me to master their stuff and I say no, is that mean? Is that rude? But also, should I take this work because I don't feel like I'm qualified? So it's a bit of a like,
yeah,
in a weird place.
Well, it seems like the universe was like telling you what to do, or the market was telling you what to do. Yeah, however you want to read it, Yeah,
it's weird because I'd never told anyone I was a mastering engineer, I didn't think of myself as a mastering engineer. In fact, it wasn't till like last year that I thought of myself as a mastering engineer. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one. Like, when do you become the thing that you do?
Right. I don't know. I think we're all trying to figure that out, right?
It's so strange. But yeah, and then, I guess it kind of just snowballed, but it's a weird one. I really love it. I've definitely had some sort of wobbly moments where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me. But then, you get back to it and you realise that you love it. So you carry on. So yeah, I've just basically carried on.
Yeah. Well, I saw recently I think I saw on Instagram today, maybe that you were nominated for an award, or maybe it was on your website. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So clearly you've had some success at it and people are digging what you're doing,
It's kind of crazy.
What was that award? Yeah.
So this is actually the second year I've been nominated for it, and So it's for the Music Producers Guild, who are a UK-based organisation.